If you're looking for an affordable portrait lens or a short telephoto lens for your Micro Four Thirds camera, you should check out this TT Artisan 50mm f1.2 lens. Kia ora, good morning everyone, Richard Wong here, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to have a look at this TT Artisan 50mm f1.2 lens. This is a lens designed for APS-C mirrorless cameras as well as Micro Four Thirds cameras. The sample I have here is for Micro Four Thirds cameras, and thank you very much to Pergear for sending me this sample. But this is not really a sponsored review because Pergear, they haven't paid me any money to do this review apart from sending me this sample. But if after watching this video you're interested in this lens, it'll be great if you check out the link to their website I put in the video description below. Alright, let's talk about the design and build quality of this lens first. This TT Artisan 50mm f1.2 lens has a very solid metal construction. Pretty much the whole lens from the front to the rear lens mount is made of metal. Even the lens cap is also made of metal, and you can screw it onto the lens. The lens does not come with any lens hood, so if you need a lens hood, you may have to go find an aftermarket one that can screw onto the 52mm front filter thread. It is a completely mechanical lens, so there's no autofocus, there's no optical image stabilizer, and if you look at the rear of the lens, there's also no electronic contacts at all. Even though it has a really fast f1.2 aperture, the size of the lens is not really that big and the weight is just over 300 grams. So I would say this is quite a lightweight lens for such a fast aperture lens with metal construction. It has a pretty large magnifocus ring and the truffle throw is around 135 degrees. So when you turn it to the infinity mark, it actually goes slightly beyond infinity, so you have to dial it back slightly to get the perfect focus at infinity. The focus ring itself is pretty smooth. The only thing is when you turn the focus to around 5-meter mark, the friction of the focus ring will suddenly change a little bit when you are turning it towards the infinity focus position. So it's probably not a problem if you are shooting photos, but if you are a videographer, that sudden change in the focus tension might affect the focus pulling a little bit. And we have the aperture ring at the front, and I really love the aperture ring on this TT Artisan lens for a couple of reasons. The first one is on both sides of the aperture ring there is a extruded area. This allows me to grab this aperture ring very easily. And the second thing is the aperture ring, it has clicks, which is quite unusual for the aperture ring from a Chinese lens manufacturer, because most other similar lenses in the market, they all have a declicked aperture ring, which is something I know for videographer you would prefer it so that you can have a smooth aperture changes. But for people like me who like to use the lens to shoot some photos, having clicks on the aperture is definitely much more preferred. And then the third reason is there are 2 clicks per stop. When you are going through the aperture ring, there are 2 clicks each stop, and the feedback from the aperture ring when you're going through the clicks, it feels absolutely fantastic. All the letters and numbers on the lens are just printed on it, so I'm not too sure whether they will get rub off after using it for a while, because for me, I only have the lens for about a week or so. I would really prefer if they are etched on it, because not only that means it will last a lot longer, but that will also make the lens look a bit more premium. But overall, for a lens that costs less than $100, I think the overall build quality and design of this TT Artisan 50mm f1.2 lens is definitely not bad at all. Okay, now let's talk about the image quality, and as usual, we start from the image sharpness first. If you look at the center of the image, at the maximum aperture f1.2, it is a little bit soft, but I think it is still very usable. Stop down slightly to f1.4 would already improve the sharpness and contrast quite a bit. If you stop down to f2, the center now become very sharp. If you look at the corner, at f1.2, the corner is also a little bit soft. Stop down to f2 and the corner become quite sharp, and if you stop down to f2.8, then the corner become very sharp as well. The minimum focus distance of this TT Artisan lens is 50 cm, so it's not exactly a macro lens. But because of its long focal length and also the crop factor, especially for this Micro Four Thirds version, so you could still take some nice close-up photo using this TT Artisan 50mm f1.2 lens. When shooting close-up photo at f1.2, the image could be a little bit soft, so you would have to stop down a little bit to around f2 or f2.8, then the image sharpness will be much improved. When shooting photo at the maximum aperture f1.2, the background bokeh is very nice, very smooth and very beautiful. This is especially true when your subject is at a close distance. You can see all the background melt in the very nice, very creamy way. There could be a little bit of cat's eye bokeh near the edge of the photo, but nothing too dramatic. When your subject is slightly further away, for example more than a couple of meters away from the camera, sometimes the bokeh, there could be a little bit of highlight near the edge of the bokeh because the aperture brake of this lens has a slightly unusual design. So when you stop down the lens to around f2.8, the bokeh, the outline of the bokeh start turning into star shape, and it will remain like that as you further stop down the lens. There is quite a bit of chromatic aberration when you are shooting with this lens at the maximum aperture. I don't think it is terrible, but I do notice if you want to reduce the amount of chromatic aberration, you have to stop down the lens quite a bit. Lens flare control is pretty reasonable for a lens at this price. While you would see a little bit of lens flare when you are shooting directly into a sun on a sunny day, the amount of lens flare I think is not too excessive. And when shooting into a bright light source in a dark area, the lens flare is quite well controlled. One thing you have to watch out though is because the lens doesn't come with any lens hood, so sometimes when you are taking photo or video and there is a very bright light source that is 90 degrees from the camera, you may see a bit of lens flare in your photo or video. But the good news is, if you use your hand or something to block the light source from the side, then you can completely eliminate those lens flare. This lens has some noticeable focus briefing, as you can see in this sample video. Combining this with the fact that the focus length friction will change a bit at around 5 meter mark, this makes this lens not really the best lens for people who want to do focus pulling. This TT Artisan 50mm f1.2 lens has pretty minimal amount of vignetting even at the maximum aperture f1.2. Stop down slightly to f1.4 and that would improve the vignetting quite a bit. And when you stop down to f2, then vignetting is virtually unnoticeable. So in terms of vignetting control, this TT Artisan lens is definitely pretty good. Okay, so what are my thoughts about this TT Artisan 50mm f1.2 lens? I think overall, there are certainly quite a few things that could be improved with this lens, no matter it's the build quality or the image quality. But for a lens that is under $100, this is really a no-brainer if you are looking at buying an affordable portrait lens or a short telephoto lens for your Micro Four Thirds camera. When you use it with a Micro Four Thirds camera, the 100mm equivalent focal length and also its large f1.2 aperture make it a great portrait lens. Yes, if you are shooting at the maximum aperture, there could be a little bit of softness that you may see in the photo if you zoom in to 100%, but that a little bit of softness is not really that bad when you are shooting portrait anyway. But this lens is not just for shooting portrait. You could use it for a lot of other things as well. So I think this lens could also be used to shoot a bit of telephoto landscape, or you can do a bit of street photography if you are too shy to get too close to your subject, or you can use it to shoot some more like abstract pattern kind of photos. So this lens, it has many other uses, definitely not just for shooting portrait. So if you are looking at buying a portrait lens or a fast short telephoto lens for your Micro Four Thirds camera and don't want to spend too much money, I think this TT Artisan 50mm f1.2 lens is really a no-brainer.